Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to another episode of Fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. Joining me, as always, are my two intrepid agents themselves. Over on the far end, we've got Mr. Don Willie. Say hello to everyone there, Don.
Hey, what's going on, agents? Glad to be here, traveling through time in this wacky world of S.H.I.E.L.D.
And, of course, the great man in the center there himself, from Smirking Gun Reviews, Mr. Rob Stone.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Glad to be here, ready to talk some more Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
All right, excellent. So, this week, episode number 3, Alien Commies from the Future. To me, a very welcome embrace of the classic camp sci-fi of the 50s. This is, of course, post-Roswell, so we have the alien invasion is in the public's mind. We get a lot of these sort of sci-fi stuff. We get a lot of our futuristic tech. So I think it was a perfect time to sort of let Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. play in this sort of sandbox. But let's get some other impressions. So on, Rob, what did you think about this episode? What's sort of your quick summary of this episode, and maybe even favorite points?
This episode, I think we both, on both our reviews, summed it up in this episode just such a blast. This was such a lot of fun. Going all the way back to like the 1950s style of sci-fi. They get to have so much fun with, especially Phil and Jemma. We get to see Daniel Sousa back, which was great. Goran Visnik his character is one of my favorite parts of Agent Carter, which I mean to get back to one of these days. The actor that played the defense guy, Gaston, he was great, even if he was awful. I love that our characters are it just feels like the real final season's here, and we're just having fun with it. And even though it's like a serious situation, I kind of feel like we know things are going to get resolved, and so the tension's a little bit low, but they still manage to keep the funny there. There is some tense fight scenes at the end. There's a lot of questions that I have going forward. I feel like both the first two episodes were one thing. This is another two-parter almost. I wonder if they're going to continue to do it like that. But all in all, just a fantastic, fun episode. And I think like we were talking about, Gemma's, I don't think an LMD anymore, or ever was. But that was such a great theory.
Oh yeah, I had several people in my chat as well through iReviews, definitely commenting and enjoying that sort of idea. But I don't know, they do kind of leaving it up in the air. I don't know. We'll definitely touch on it. Don, what's your little summary opinion of this week's episode?
Well, for one, the whole bit with the guy from the Defense Department, classic, because you get to Deke, and he's like, everyone's like, all right, he's only going to listen to you. He's like, why would he only listen to me? And they're like, come on, are you really going to make me see it? Oh man, and then when he's in there with Mac and Yo-Yo, and he's up there like, yeah, okay, here we got you here, chica, muy caliente, and he's like, yeah, we got your boy here to keep you alive. And he's like, did he just call me boy? I'm like, wow. And then May comes out and he's like, hey, yeah, what happened? He's like, he just called me Oriental. Like, wow, this dude just, you know what? Straight out the 1950s. I love it.
He is hitting every point on that racism bingo card right there. He's not missing a check off there.
Yeah, So I was loving that. Sousa. What's when we get to Sousa later, there's another theory that got blown totally out of the water by this episode. A theory I've had ever since Agent Carter season 1 that it was like, ah, damn, all right, well, there goes that theory. Yeah, and I guess Gem, Gem LMD, yeah, nah, no dice, but love the episode. They had a lot of great stuff in there, and let's talk about it.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, it's fun because I think a lot of the great points of this episode really work around. To me, this is definitely a legacy season. They're hitting all the high points. They're hitting all this history. They're hitting all the little bits they want to go and play with. We got Jemma getting to be Agent Carter, which is freaking awesome. We've get, Phil going through time, meeting kind of his heroes, the people that sort of influenced him as an agent, which is, kind of a fun idea. But one thing they do really well, and definitely all the scenes with Gerald Sharp, our Defense Department kidnappee, and even when Jemma and Phil are undercover, one of the things the show really does well to me is banter. The naturalness of exchange of dialogue. Half the times, I'm not sure if some of this is improv, just from a character standpoint, or if it's just the sign of actors working so well together and being so comfortable in with the characters, and the writers and the filmmakers and the actors all trusting and working in with each other. I think was something that was just really awesome. A lot of the aside comments, like you said, the bit was Sharp where he's hitting out, and we have May say, called me an Oriental, and Yo-Yo's like, I had to get her out of there. When we have Mac talking to like, I guess it's time to call in the cavalry. Well, that's what Dee's like, that's what we call May. What, you think bringing an unemotional robot killing machine is in this? And Daisy's like, that sounds like classic May to me. I mean, there are so many, even Sky's little reference to finding out that all the areas were shield bases, saying like, wow, conspiracy theory me was right on the money. It's like there's all of these points where they get to play with everything they've done throughout the 7 seasons and make little comments and little references and small little bits. Whereas if you've been along on the journey, it totally pays off. But even if you're new, you get to have fun with how these characters play back and forth. So that was really something I think that they just had so much fun in with this episode. Yeah, well, actually, let's jump on the Jemma LMD theory, since that was something that was around with us. Obviously, we see at the end there when they pull the EMP, we get to see the Chronicons go out. Phil goes out, though I do think that little sparkle in the eye is his sort of reboot sequence or something like that. But what we don't see after that actually is Jemma. So they could be holding that for a reveal next season. She's also not seen in any of the scenes for next week's preview. So I don't think it is, because I think she would have warned Daisy, this is going to freak you out. Don't worry. She gives Daisy no heads up. So I think the LMD idea is kind of shot, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that scene? Does that pretty much seal it in, or do we have a new theory now with Gemma's long life or seeming long life?
I think I'm done speculating on that one, because I just she was having so much fun as being her. It was so sincere, and when you look at what they were doing to the other robots, or what they were trying to get the other, try to discover the Chronicons, I don't know. She was just enjoying it way too much to be an LMD. But there's always something else that it could be. But I, for the life of me, couldn't even imagine what it would be.
Fair there, Don.
Clone, maybe. I mean, listen, it just seems odd that they have went out of their way to not say how long it's been. It's been a long time. I'm like, yeah, but there has to be something bigger as to why they refuse to say like exactly how long, you know, because if it's been 10 years, just say 10 years, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, but there must be something to where either either she's a lot older and we're not going to get the reveal until later, like, you know, like maybe in Winter Soldier where, you know, we pulled off where Natasha pulled off that mask, you know, which that would be kind of heartbreaking to a certain extent because it's like, damn, you know, she spent all this time just trying to fix things and never really got to live her life. Um,
That would be very sad. That would be a very sad character choice to have for
yeah.
her. I agree.
So I mean, and then we still haven't seen Fitz, so we have no. I mean, like because that'll be the key right there. Because if we see Fitz, and Fitz is like an old man with gray beard and white hair, then then we know like, oh my god, this is this isn't what we thought it was.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
That is a good thing. That could be another reason why they're hiding out Fitz, as will be the reveal of how much time has passed.
Yeah.
I like that kind of idea because you're right. There's definitely something to the evasiveness of the time. If it is 10 years, they would just say 10 years. So yeah, there is kind of an odd thing, even if it becomes it's been 50 years, but because we've been traveling through time, our bodies don't reflect the same thing. I mean, they could do some science-y, sounding thing, quantum genetic effects or some weird thing like that.
it's just again, it's just weird because like we haven't even heard a mention of Fitz since episode 1 either.
Yeah, all answers go to whenever we get Fitz into a story. It'll probably be a flashback. It might even be a whole episode to explain all of these events. That'll give a whole episode to Jemma and Fitz and like Enoch and how they planned all this. And I think all answers will be in that episode, and it'll blow. And I would expect it to be like right smack dab in the middle. So if this is episode 3, I'd say around 6 or 7, we'll get like a lot of answers. And then we'll have the final roll into the end of the show.
I don't know. I don't know if I can take it, man.
I know. Every week you want more answers, and they just keep holding it back.
Well, that's the crazy thing is, in a way, I mean, 3 episodes in, we are like a quarter through the season already. So, I mean, there's a lot. There's definitely a lot of stuff to cover. But, I mean, I don't know. Honestly, because we don't know where the story is going. That's sort of something that Jemma hit on when we find out that, we're not traveling through time so much as surfing the wake behind the Chronicoms who are actually traveling through time. So they don't know when the mission is going to end or how far they're going to go. It's just, do they stop them or do they lose? They're just going to kind of keep this sort of effect, which does put a certain interesting pressure, I guess, on the team. And also it does mean that they're constantly playing a catch up.
Yeah.
And Corey S here in the chat's been saying a lot of interesting things, and what she's saying here about time-wise, Deke has to come into existence. And so at some point, Fitz and Simmons have to have at least one child. So, like I said, I think whenever they finally show Fitz, we're going to get a huge Fitz-Simmons story. It might end up being tragic. We might see a whole lifetime in one episode.
I would be so sad if they make their relationship tragic. I love Fitzsimmons. But you're right, they could totally do that.
Yeah.
And that, and they could pull off that type of episode where they do like, a life in a day type kind of thing.
Yeah, remember the Jemma episode where she was stuck on that planet by herself for all that time? Amazing episode. I just watched that a couple of weeks ago too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right on. Also, Corey also mentions in there, costumes on point this episode. Simmons as Carter was awesome. And Jemma as Carter, That was so much fun. The chance that she gets to actually play her hero in the show. Though I did like Sousa mentioning that she has the worst English accent, which I thought was just an awesome, a very American thing to say. But yeah, so we did get part of the fun, I think, of this episode was not only do we have Simmons playing Agent Carter, but they're going into Area 51, a SHIELD base. We get a lot of classic old school tech. The giant wristwatch communicator was hilarious. And then, of course, we also get one of my favorite scenes in the entire episode. It's trying to instigate an emotional response.
It was your scene of the week.
It was indeed. It was indeed. And again, this is just another one of those where it's like, how much of this was written and how much did they just let the camera roll and have the actors sort of improv and play things? I don't know. I mean, there was definitely some structure, but I love how they're messing with them. And then when they get the responses, you even have Phil at a few points like apologetic, like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you that much. And of course, we get the classic Blade Runner reference there at the end in the bus, which was just awesome, which again was also meant to inspire, to get an emotional response from the replicants in that. And here we have it trying to work on the Chronicom. So just again, it's another one of those fun, just sci-fi references that they really got to just play with. And look, 20% of the population does have an extreme discomfort to the word moist.
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 I think we know who is in this three that does not like that word.
Yeah. It's very clear. It does have a very strong...
I love that they went there, but I'm like, oh.
Devontae Smith, sorry, I'm just catching the chat, mentioned Fitz isn't missing because the writers thought it would be fun. In real life, he was working on another project, so he shows when he's available. I do know in the first half of last season that was the case. They had shot these back-to-back, so I wasn't sure, but I will totally take that because the guy's amazing, and he should be working all the time. But I want him to finish. Want him to finish. Agents here. All right. Any other points with our Area 51 little visit or emotional responses or anything else on those points you guys want to touch on?
I mean, you know what's funny?
I thought you were going to ask us how we would. Sorry, go ahead, Don.
I know. I was just going to say, they were right there. They were right there until Sousa comes in. Like the last scientist was the Chronicom. He's sitting right there, and then Sousa walks in and totally just screws everything up by accident, of course, but still, like, oh, damn it, Daniel, damn Daniel, and not because you have on some white Vans.
But no, actually, Rob, you were getting to a point I didn't want to ask, which I was missing here. What would you do to try and elicit an emotional response from a Chronicom?
I had several prepared.
All right. I'm excited now.
As far as how I would do it. Okay, because I was trying to think of my own ways, and I was just like, well, the first thing I would try is to have them try to play the first 20 minutes of the game, The Last of Us. If you can get through, if you don't show emotion by the first little bit of the Last of Us game, then you're not human. Old Yeller, the end of Old Yeller, let them watch all of Old Yeller. Just sit there watching them while they watch it, And if they don't cry when the dog gets blown away, then you know there's something there. Or if worse comes to worse, if it's a male you're interviewing, you just give him an old kick in the old crotch.
Mm.
That would definitely elicit an emotional response one way or another.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's pretty rough. Wow.
Desperation move. Last ditch effort.
Oh yeah. Wow.
I think that one for last.
I was
if you get past Old Yeller, you're probably fine. If you're crying at the end of Old Yeller, you're probably fine.
Well, the thing about it though is, would Old Yeller have been appropriate for the time period though?
But you have to see everything before that. I think Corey actually in the chat hits it right in the head. That's exactly what I was thinking of. The minute you mentioned Old Yeller, I was like, what else could you do? The beginning of Up. That would do it, because you get the whole life and then the loss. And I've seen that like a dozen times because my daughter was young at the time. And so it was on all the time. Every time. Tears every time. So I think that was a good suggestion.
You could play that Sarah McLachlan commercial with the dogs and the cats and stuff, and the Humane Society commercials or PSA she does. Seeing all the sad dogs and animals, like if you don't get emotional during that.
Hey, you could just use your standard internet puppy and cat videos. I think to get some sort of response off. If they just look at it quizzically, then you know that they're definitely not human.
Now you know what? Johnny Cash's rendition of Hurt.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's a good one. All right. Okay. I think we are prepped. Yeah. Definitely access to the internet helps. We need to be sure to have links for all these YouTube references in the back, just in case at the description when we're done, just to be sure that we're all prepared in an emergency. Good. The chat, make them watch a good stand-up comedian. Also an excellent one. Yeah. All right. Perfect. Well, you brought him up. Let's dive into Agent Daniel Sousa. Now, Corey asked here in the chat, how did Simmons not know about Daniel Sousa and recognize him as a Carter fangirl? She should at least know what he looks like. I think maybe just focusing more on Carter, it appears that Sousa wasn't with her for necessarily all that long. So perhaps there are larger elements that kind of stood out. She did obviously know who he was. And I love that scene where he plays along with her and then she plays along with him as they both realize what's actually going on. So that's a possible explanation. I think that if Phil saw Sousa, he would have recognized him immediately because he's the kind of history guy I think that would have done it. And I did find it interesting that he went out to the van or to the bus to meet up with the VIPs, but he somehow missed Sousa. I guess that would have ruined the rest of the episode. But yeah, Rob, what do you think on our Daniel Sousa appearance here? We get our little Agent Carter reference.
Oh, I mean, it was obvious that if they were going to get anybody from Agent Carter, it was going to be him. Possibly Jarvis, but it just Jarvis wouldn't have really fit because he's, associated with Tony Stark. But if you were that actor is really great. I loved seeing him return. He was one of my favorite parts of Agent Carter. The one thing that I feel bad about is it's been a while since I've watched all of Agent Carter, and I didn't remember how it all wrapped up. And so my question was, how did he not know? Like, if we were already asking the question about Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D., and he's already asking questions, then what happened to him? And because I don't remember the end of that show, and I'm mad at myself for that. Next week, that question looks like it's going to be answered. Why? Maybe they never really answered it. If somebody in the chat knows that, or in the comment section later on that watched it, tell us if you remember what happened to Sousa at the end of that, if they resolved it. Because seeing him for the trailer for next week in the pool, very Sunset Boulevard, leads me to go, I don't think I know anything. And I love how that trailer actually said, we don't really know. The books don't say everything if you weren't there. So I'm more excited to see what they're gonna do next week and whether or not he's gonna be added to the roster. Because at first I thought to myself, no, that couldn't happen. But then the way Henry Simmons' Mac is saying we're gonna save him, it really sounds like it's not gonna be one of those situations where he's just another person that has to die. He could, if he didn't really die, then he could be with the team. But I don't know. There's a lot. But him meeting Jemma and their whole banter and back and forth, whether or not she should have recognized him or not, I thought that was handled really great because she's trying to hold on to her undercover and he's trying to just see how far he can get her to crack. He should have been the one interrogating the guy from the Defense Department. But I really dig this guy, and I really wish I hope we get to see more of him. And if he becomes part of the team temporarily, I'm all for it.
Yeah, same here. Since we're on the subject of Daniel Sousa, like I said, this actually blew apart one of my theories, and that was that he wanted becoming Peggy Carter's husband. Because if you remember from Winter Soldier, was it Winter Soldier or was it? Okay, so yeah, Peggy talks about how Captain America saved the man who would eventually become her husband. And so when Agent Carter premiered and you see these two, I'm like, okay, this is obvious. But then when it comes to this episode, you don't see him with a ring on. And it's like, yes, he's excited to see Peggy because, who wouldn't be? But I was like, oh man, that's not her ex-husband. It's not her current husband. No, you guys killed it for me. So
no, they very clearly implied that he hasn't seen her for a while and that he misses her. Just that little and he takes and he cleans up his hair. It was a nice, just tiny bit that told that whole story of what happened. Corey's mentioning at the end of season 2 of Agent Carter, Peggy and Sousa were a couple together as a couple. It ended with a kiss. So yeah, it certainly implies that maybe they had gotten together. Here we're seeing they kind of sort of split up. So it was one of those just nice little character bits right there.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I really hope at some point they decide to finish up the series on Disney Plus. Just give it one more season, just to kind of wrap things up. Yeah, man. So if you guys haven't watched Agent Carter before, go back. It's 2 good seasons of really good television, and I wish they would have. Kept up.
Yeah, and they hit a nice thing though. They do touch the last season on the whole Dark Force and everything, which then end up playing in season 4, primarily here with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So yeah, they did a lot of nice try to set up moments in there. 7 seasons and a movie. Okay, we're gonna go with that hashtag right there. Hashtag 7 seasons and a movie. I will totally go with that. Actually, I love the one thing you always kind of worry about when they're going to do cameos is how sort of blatant or how natural are they going to make these obvious? Is it just going to be, like you said, if it was Jarvis, why would he have been there? Would have seemed to have been just an obvious inclusion just for fan effect. I think using Sousa and the way that they did it made it very natural because he wasn't the focus of the episode. He did kind of put a wrench in their plans, but he's just here to set up for where they're going to go in next episode. And I really like the feel of that. I like that they didn't make it obvious. It made him natural. Oh, he's an agent. He's there. He's worried about infiltration. They're doing a test. Of course he would show up here. And they get to play in the idea that he's already pursuing what he doesn't know as Hydra, but as infiltrators post-war. which again, I think is sort of a nice way to sort of set up that there is already, even in the early age, there's fear and concerns of what ends up being Hydra coming into S.H.I.E.L.D., which brings us into why you would have a big mystery next week. He pursued this, he died, or something happened. That would obviously be another big carbon for the Chronicom. So I liked really how they made it, that cameo, very natural, where it really makes sense why he would be here and why they would run into him.
Yeah, and another thing when it comes to that is, this is the first time that we're really getting to see like the early days of S.H.I.E.L.D. when it wasn't as savvy as it is now. Where it's not the big international conglomerate that basically knows everything. This is the time where they're building things from the ground up still, and CIA can override them. Whereas modern day Shield, CIA walks in, CIA gets walked out. you know. But the one thing I was going to say is they actually could have had Howard Stark in this episode along with Sousa, because remember, Howard Stark is an inventor. Helios is a big time invention. Howard Stark was working on propulsion technology for a very long time. If you remember, the first Captain America, his introductory scene is him doing the levitating car.
That's
So
right.
he would have been perfect for that as well, but it would have been one of those things where it might have taken away if you have Howard Stark there, and it just kind of looks a little cheesy. So I think Sousa was the perfect amount of cameo, because he wasn't the main focus in Agent Carter, but he was big enough that it was like, if you know who he is, it's like, oh my god, I can't believe they got him. Because it's still it's still an amazing get regardless. So yeah, damn Daniel, damn.
All right, get anything to throw on top of that, Rob, before we move on to our next subject?
No, just that again, Don's nailing it with like the floating car that could end up being Lola. Chris Cooper isn't on Preacher anymore, so
That's true.
Or is that his name? Dominic Cooper. Dominic Cooper. He's not doing Preacher anymore. I don't know what his next project is, but that would make sense if somehow that's where he got Lola from. It might be a stretch, but I could see that actually kind of happening. The only other cameo that I think we'll get for sure that kind of has to happen, and I don't think he would have any problem with coming back, is Samuel L. Jackson's got to be back at some point as Fury, even if it's just in the finale.
Samuel L. Jackson says no to nothing. So yeah, I think if they wanted to try and do that, they totally could. And it would be interesting if they, I don't know. Well, here, maybe this will be the good transition into the next comment that I wanted to sort of chat on. Briefly is Phil LMD. Now, I have been very clear with how much that I want to see the return of real Phil Coulson. However, 2 points. One, Phil LMD is kind of the superhero version of Phil. And if you talk about ultimate wish fulfillment, that Phil himself now gets to, in a way, be a superhero with the strength and the technology and the backups. I mean, he had the shield hand, the fake hand for a while. Then he had the shield and everything. So he had little bits. But he is really having fun with this. And it is kind of a fun, again, real Phil couldn't necessarily do these things, but Phil in this new body can. Also, if they did bring S.H.I.E.L.D. back into and Phil Coulson back into the MCU proper, replacing him as an LMD would require no additional work from the audience, as they could just say, oh, this is an LMD version of Phil Coulson. And the audience would go, okay. And you wouldn't have to worry about whether or not they had watched 7 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So again, while I would like to see original Phil back, I'm kind of warming up a little bit to Phil LMD here, just because of the potentials of where it could go.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how I would feel about it when it first happened. It's because like they literally did the same thing with Picard in the new Star Trek series. So I was sitting there like, oh man, like how am I gonna feel? But the thing about it is, I think I'm a little more accepting of it because everyone's aware that he's an LMD. Like there
Right.
isn't gonna be a thing of him going and trying to live Phil Coulson's life. He's very aware that he's, you know, like yes, he has the memories, the sort of consciousness. He has all of the Phil Coulson mannerisms, which is why even though he is an LMD, he's still a fanboy, you know, because that's what Coulson would be in real life. But he's fully aware, like, yeah, I'm not the guy, you know. So I think I can accept it a little more because of the fact that it's like, yeah, they're not pretending that he's the real Phil.
Right.
Like, yeah, this is they're accepting of him as the replacement Phil, but they, deep down they know it's like, yeah, all right, well, this this is not the guy, but I mean, if this is the closest we can get, we'll take what we can get for right now.
Yeah, and I can understand that. Rob?
It's just such a tribute to Clark Gregg as an actor. Why we're so quick to accept Phil MD. I think in the end, Clark just can sell it, man. He brings every version that we've seen, and and every way that Phil's been played, even in his growth as a character before he died, and since he's been the Sarge and now an LMD, it's his performance that just draws us in. His sincerity to the character, the way that they've always written him as a fanboy. He's the audience a lot of times. I think is how we'd react to certain things happening. Like if we were to run into Captain America, we'd have our cards like, please sign this. I think that's such a huge part of it, and that's gonna be the part that I think I miss the most is Phil in Agents when this is all over, is Clark Gregg doing other, moving on from Phil, because after meeting him last year, he's so like that in real life too. I wanted to just hang out all day. I wanted to how much do I have to pay to spend an hour just with you, just sitting here talking about anything, and I would have been fine with it. And so I've been on board since he opened his eyes and started talking. I do think we'll see a really, really, really sweet emotional return of Phil. How long? I don't know. There's several different ways they can do it with the Ghost Rider thing. There's been several. I feel like there's more to that story than we know. But right now, they could swap him out. They could do all sorts of stuff. But in the end, because everybody is so accepting and they know who he is, and he's not gonna, suddenly turn well, I don't know about that, but I'm like other things. I'm 100% on board with Phil LMD just because it may not be Phil, but it's the Phil we need, right? Or it's not the Phil that I'm trying to do a Dark Knight reference.
It's the Phil that we want.
Failing.
It's the Phil that we need.
Yeah. Yes.
I like it. I like the reference. Okay. Now, I don't want to go any further. I think we've got even too long before touching up on two of our girls that were having some serious little personal issues through this episode, Melinda May and Elena Rodriguez. May having a little bit of a breakdown in the midst of a super cool action scene setup, which I loved. I loved that they did the slow-mo roll in the tear gas or whatever little smoke canisters they were using. Like, this is going to be a big scene. It's like the total setup for it. And then she freaks out. Rob, what were you thinking seeing May just start to lose? May, of all people, lose it.
I think the chaos of that situation probably resembles how she died a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Like the last, moments of her life were probably chaotic and surrounded by foes, and it might have been like kind of shaking her loose. We might be seeing her start to come back to normal here, because it was like jarring, and she actually sounded like herself for a second when she was asked about her condition. She sounded like May for a minute. Like, I have no idea what's going on. It wasn't the drone, it wasn't the monotone, the robotic kind of sound of May again. It sounded like May, but just freaked out. We don't see that very, hardly at all in the show, but I don't know. For a second there, it felt like the old May was back, just in real emotional dire straits and confusion. Because we don't, again, like other characters like Fitz and the whole thing with time, we don't know what happened to her over there. She said, oh, I did this and I killed this and then I died. But that's just, the Cliff Notes version. I think that there's more that we're going to see about what happened to her shortly. As far as Yo-Yo goes, oh, man, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I was wondering if it was kind of like, is this her like different systems coming online? Because it's not the same as like, I mean, there's the PTSD idea that she's just kind of repressing those emotions, but because of the procedures that Jemma was doing and Enoch mentioning that she's malfunctioning, it's the only language that he knows to use. I don't know, Dom, maybe you can run with this. Do you think that it's just her different systems of self now waking up after her being dead or her procedure, or do you think this is like an actual repressed PTSD psychology thing that she has to kind of like break through?
I'm thinking it's a psychological thing. Listen, she died. She remembers dying. She remembers, she remembers dying, right? And now the fact that she's back, and I think she wants to feel useful again. And it's one of those things where she still hasn't come to grips with the fact that she was where Phil was. She was where Phil was. Phil came back and it changed him. Remember, if you guys remember season 1, part of her whole thing was she was supposed to be keeping track of Phil to make sure that he wasn't too off the reservation. There was the whole thing with the little secret phone with her, phoning back to Fury about, how was Coulson doing, and now she's in that same situation where she's the one that kind of needs to be monitored. So I'm pretty sure that there's something in there that's probably gnawing at her, because Coulson was kind of the guinea pig, and now here she is kind of being the guinea pig after having to make the ultimate sacrifice. So I mean, there's going to be something in there that's going to kind of, I guess, trigger her emotionally when it comes to this whole thing, to where she's sitting there looking like, what does this all mean? And can she be the person that she was before? Or is she going to have to be a totally different kind of May from now on? I mean, like, I might be getting a little too philosophical with it right now, but, I think you guys know where I'm going.
No, I think getting philosophical is actually sort of the place to go. Devontae mentioned May's died twice in the series, so she's trying to catch up with Phil.
It makes me think of Buffy season 6, when Buffy, spoilers, at the end of season 5, sacrifices herself. She dies. She's buried. They bring her back, and she's all kinds of messed up because she remembers that she was in heaven, and they pulled her from it. Now she's back fighting again, fighting and having to be the warrior for everybody. And she has not had it. She doesn't get it. Like May might just need a chance to really catch up to everything, but they can't. It's like they hit the ground running. Here's the mission. We need you back, but we don't have time to deal with the fact that you were dead. I think they really need, and I think that's a good thing, is that like what they're saying is Phil being able to reach her, because she might just need something as simple as, we need to just take a step back and talk to her and really try to reach her, find out what happened. What can we give her? Because we really haven't had time to ask those questions.
Yeah. Well, and Corey in the chat mentions the same thing. It's now with her breakdown, maybe Phil will be able to reach out to May and help her deal with that. And in some ways, he is the one person that really can help her, because he's also been dead and come back. And yeah, we don't know, was there something more that happened? Did she travel to heaven, or did she have a spiritual experience in those moments of death? Not to mention, she was kind of in hell when she got killed, and that allowed her to come back. I mean, just the whole dimension hopping in the midst of that could definitely add some issues to deal with. Kevin's saying, yeah, she didn't stay in the tube long enough. Yeah, that's definitely it. She did not recover properly, so she's having to sort of catch up outside. But like you said, Rob, that's the thing about the show. It's like, yeah, we'd like to have time for you to do this, but we got to go because there's mission and there's things we've got to deal with. Now, as far as Yo-Yo, she did seem to, it doesn't necessarily seem to be so much of a psychological issue for her. Again, she seems to have done I tried to do it and I wasn't able to. We see the world slow down like it does for her. And I think that it gives a real interesting pairing, I think, having Yo-Yo and May working together, because I don't know how much time they've actually spent working together in the past. It was trying to run over all of the little scenes and sequences, and nothing really giant stands out. But I like the fact of two of these girls kind of leaning on each other as they need help to deal with it. They even did that perfect exchange when Yo-Yo asked May, is like, what's going on? He's like, do I look like I want to talk about this? And then May asks her, well, why didn't you grab that? And she's like, do I look like I want to talk about this? They're kind of in the exact same position. And I love the idea of maybe the two of them helping to sort of work through their issues. And I just like the pairing up. I think they move. I think they fight well together. You guys have any?
I'm still trying to bring it a little bit, because I can't figure, like, if they're just if her powers are just glitching, and it's again like May, like a psychological thing. I just don't. I don't know if maybe I'm too slow to figure out what they're trying to say, or they're just purposely being vague about what's going on with it. I thought, I loved the beginning of the episode when her and Mac were in the restaurant, the diner, and they were touching, he was holding her hand, and I was like, oh God, this is what we needed to bring her back. Those two reconnecting, and then her to still have that problem, or at least not be able to work it out by the end of the episode, still leaves me kind of I just don't know what's wrong, because she got the powers from was it the Terrigen?
Yes.
So it's inside her, so it's got to be psychological, right? But I don't know if it's the shock to the system of having real arms to robot arms, but I would have thought that had been a reflex. So I'm still waiting to see how they're going to handle that, because it's another one of those questions that I don't know what they're going to do to resolve it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you know, yeah, you know what's funny too? That I noticed about this episode, and I mean, we all kind of noticed uh, Daisy no powers. But anyway,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Again,
No,
no,
she
I mean, she does
didn't. I
great
mean, there were a
kick-ass.
couple of times I expected it.
yeah, that was kind of like I noticed that. Like I watched the episode second time today, and I was just kind of like, wait, um, why isn't she using her powers against the Chronicoms right now? But um, yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know. There might be something more than just psychological with Yo Yo. I mean, because here's the thing: she really was trying this time. Like last time,
Oh
it was
yeah,
debatable about whether or not she actually tried to use her powers and whether she froze. This time, it was active. Like you saw her, kind of like mid run, and it was like snap back. Before she got to move anywhere, like her powers just kind of like, no, no, no. Sorry, madam, you will not be moving today. You know, um, so yeah, that's one of the big differences uh between her and May, where it's like May freaked out and panicked and was like, "Oh my god, I can't breathe," you know, whereas Yo Yo definitely tried to use her powers, and it was kind of like, nah, nah, sorry, sister's not happening today.
yeah. And it's brought up in the chat there. Again, they talk about she did have the Shrike stuff in her. They did say that it's breaking down, but perhaps that's affecting, or like just isn't affecting her like a virus. I do find it interesting, but both her and May did have these sort of extreme experiences at the end of last season. Yo-Yo with the Shrike infestation and May being killed, but again also dealing with those the same aliens, the same creatures. I'm wondering, are their injuries sort of tied together in that sense? And is that why we were kind of getting this little pair up? As the two of them have similar issues, they both got to kind of work through. Again, I'm just going off the cuff here on my brain. I don't have an answer to that. It's more of just a question, a thought. Frank Cardinal is
Yeah, I
asking
think.
if the arms affecting her speed. We don't know.
Yeah, I would like to know what the physiological ramifications, I guess, we're seeing from the Shrikes. It just without a real explanation of why the Shrikes affect her in that way, I still feel kind of lost on her plot point. But I know they're going to resolve it. But that's one I really want answered sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Corey, you are asking all of the questions I'm going to ask before they come out of my mouth. You are in my head. The EMP did not affect Yo-Yo's arms. She was able to crawl and move and push up. Everyone else sort of dropped out. So, one, that's interesting. Like I said, Frank asks if the EMP if the new arms are affecting her speed. Devante's asking, thinking that it's probably the arms. We haven't seen her use the speed with the new arms. So yeah, that could potentially be it. My assumption is it's not, because it's made by Fitz effectively, and so he's was able to adjust the other arms for her. But you're right, we don't know, and it's something that we haven't seen her do at all. She hasn't used her powers in any sense with her old arms or her new arms this season.
Well, if I may, I think the reason why the arms probably kept working is because remember, Coulson and the Chronicoms are all powered by whatever technological advancements that they have that make them susceptible to EMPs, whereas Yo-Yo's arms are powered by her. So I mean, yeah, they
Okay, so
might be
you think they don't have a second electrical power source or something like that? Okay.
right. It's like they're not powered by some batteries; they're powered by her. So that might be the key difference. Like they probably wired into her nervous system.
And that's what Alex Zer,
Uh,
if I'm saying that right, says in the chat here that her arms were calibrated correctly to her powers in 701. That's what Jemma did. So
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I remember her. She just totally mentioned it. Just again, have to be honest, the fact that we haven't seen her use her powers, and again, that's kind of continuing a theme, like you mentioned with Quake, is less powers being seen this season. Whether it be a budgetary season or just a storytelling point, and they want to focus on other stuff. I'm fine either way. I'm still can't wait for the next episode, and I'm still stuck to the screen when I'm watching it. But, hey, if they want to skew their budget somewhere else to tell bigger storylines or get us to a bigger finale and cut some of the effects a little earlier on, I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a style too. Like the first 2 episodes were our 30s gangster story. We've got our 50s sci-fi next week. It looks like it's going to be like film noir. So who knows what style they're going to use? If they go to like the 60s, we could see counterculture type of stuff. What will they do in the 70s? Will we have more of a all the president's men kind of feel to it? I don't know, but it's pretty cool.
Watergate. No, think about it, right? Think about it, right? So they were in the 30s. They jumped 20 years into the 50s. They jump another 20 years into the 70s. Nixon is president. Watergate.
That would be way cool. That would be a way cool connection to do.
And then you figure 2, 4, 6, 8. They jump forward into the 90s, and then the last couple of episodes are in modern day.
I would go with that. I think they could have a great stuff. You could get will Phil run into younger Phil in the 90s as they're going to do an early Fury or possible Captain Marvel kind of connection with that. I mean, it gives them all of these fun little possibilities. Do you think we're actually going to see Agent Carter, maybe even an older Agent Carter when they do 70s or 90s? Or do you think that Sousa's going to be kind of that connection and they're going to focus on other kind of connections or stuff like that later on? How much do you think they're going to stick with the Agent Carter early Shield connection through this?
I honestly think that this is probably it.
Okay, it would work for me. Just sort of curious if we would see if they're saving Carter to do an older version of her.
I mean, well, I would hate to see Sousa get taken out, but at the same point, it's like, how do you preserve the timeline? Because the whole thing of you save Daniel Sousa and then what? Like, do you drop him off, in the 1970s and say, hey, you're gonna have to live your life as somebody totally different from now on? Like, even for him, that might be a stretch.
Does he stay with the team and travel in time with them? Perhaps maybe making a sacrifice at some point later on. Because he's supposed to die. If they do want to save him, I mean, does his body disappear? Do they find? We don't know what the book says. So we don't know how close to the book they've got to stick. But yeah, that was sort of the thought. I'm really excited about next week. I love the film noir approach. I love if they're doing the entire episode in black and white. I think again, it's the show having fun with what they can do at sort of the end. But it does sort of bring up a thing. If someone is supposed to die, could you just pluck them out of time then, since they have no further contribution? I don't know. That's an interesting thought, though. All right, so I think we kind of hit on everything. We could leave this off with a threaten to probe, like they did with Gerald Page. I love that as a final ending. That was a perfect denouement of and the uncomfortableness in Mac's face of doing it was just so perfect. It's like, I have to say this, but I really don't want to.
And leave it up to Deke to be the guy to come up with that. And he's like, come on, man. And he gave it a look like, come on, Mac. Say it, say it, say it.
Yeah,
Poor
Devontae
Mac,
asked,
he had two scenes, the end scene and then the other scene where he's like, I have this information. I'm going to lie to you. I don't want to do it. I'm going to do it. I have the truth, but I don't want to tell you. Punch in the face. Mac was great in this episode with dealing with Sharp. I loved it so much, and him being prodded on by Deke to do it. It was so hilarious.
Well, and I think that was one of the things we talk about, timeliness of this show and the fact that this was shot all of last year, and yet all of the racism, sexism points that they are bringing up perfectly timed for stuff that we're going through right now. And yes, Devontae mentions in the chat, as much as he hated the DOD guy, did anyone else find him messing with the instigators funny? Those were some of my favorite scenes. And it was because he was a racist prick. Sorry for my language there. But it was able to work because you could see how out of place he was and how just dinosaur on his approach was. And the actor played it all so perfectly. He's so into his own self-superiority. And it's like, God, you are a worthless human being. And we just need to know a tiny bit of information. We got to play with this. And all we could do is not beat the crap out of you. It was, I loved all of those. Especially, again, just the team knowing they're holding themselves back. Like you mentioned, Rob, Mac at the end. He needed to get that off his chest.
Mm-hmm. That I think the audience was like, we needed that to happen. We really needed that guy to get knocked out. But it was hilarious. Everything leading up to it, as awful as everything that he was saying was, it was entertaining as hell. The actor killed it. He wasn't over the top either. He was just really, really good.
Yeah, again, it's the underplaying, and I love that it was just like, oh yeah, I'll tell you, if I was a big idiot, I would.
Oh, and the fact that Deke thought he had it. He was like, "Come on, man, we were interfacing so well."
Sure thing, Ivan.
Oh yeah.
I know a guy like this. He can be racist against anyone. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All right. Well, I think we're hitting the hour point. I think we have hit all of our big points. Before we wrap this up, any last little statements, insights, or points that you guys want to hit before we're done?
Nah, I'm good.
Good. Done?
It's been a long day.
I can't think of anything in particular. I just, oh man, save Sousa.
I've got one thing, but I'm going to hold it off till next week.
Ooh, something to look forward to. Exciting. All right. Well, thank you, everyone who was able to join us live in the chat. Silva, Corey, you're straight off and early on. Who else? Let me go through the whole list. Devontae, awesome. Always here for you. Babaro, welcome again. Kevin, always great to have you in. I don't want to miss anyone. Dun, dun, dun. If I do miss you, I'm very sorry. My brain doesn't always work well.
Great comments today this week, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Great comments.
Really loved everyone jumping in that. Lily Mack, Frank Cardinal. Frank, always awesome to jump in here. Alexander, I think I know who you are there. Excellent. Anyway, thank all of you for jumping in with us live on the chat. Always much more fun when you're here sharing in your questions. Makes it all what it is. And like I say, next couple episodes, I am going to open this up for people in the chat. So pay attention. I will be putting out links in the chat probably 2 episodes from now, I think, when we get around the halfway point. for you guys to jump in, and you can be on the show, ask questions, be part of the conversation. Hopefully that will all work out well. We'll find out. But we're going to wrap things up for now. Thank you as always. Don, why don't you tell the folks where they can find you?
You can find me on YouTube here at A Dawn of Ice and Fire. And in fact, I will actually be doing a live stream the first time in over a year tomorrow. And yeah, you can also catch me on Twitter at iDonWillie. That's IDONWILLI. And Darren, as always, thank you for having me. Rob, take it away.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at reviews_gun. I have a little YouTube channel called Smirking Gun Reviews, and I also do games on Twitch. In fact, right after this, we're going to be playing a hard walkthrough of The Last of Us for a lead up to The Last of Us Part 2 that comes out next week. So if you want to catch me in a little bit on Twitch, my game channel is Smirking Gun Plays. If you want to come in and say hi or watch me die a lot, because playing that game on hard is hard. So that's where you can find me.
Excellent. Yes, everyone, definitely try and check out Rob's Twitch channel, Don's live stream tomorrow night. And of course, we will be back here. Same Marvel time, same Shield channel. I'll get up a cool version of saying that. Anyway, thanks again for joining us. We're all done. Catch y'all next time. Bye-bye. # 7 seasons in a movie.
7 seasons in a movie.
7 seasons in a movie.